Well, Dr. Diane Langberg, thank you for joining us on the Craft and Character podcast. I want to begin and really kind of ask, because you've been at this work for almost 5 decades, and I'm curious what actually compelled you to want to do this very difficult yet redemptive work.
It's almost like there's an unwritten, what's wrong with you that you thought you should do that? It's actually been over 5 decades.
Wow.
51 years this year. And I was not compelled in terms of anything internal. It was a really long time in the counseling field. And there were very few women in the counseling field, even more so in Christian circles. But I got a part-time job with a Christian psychologist. And because I was female, he sent a lot of females to me. And I had a young woman who was in high school at home who said at some point in one of our sessions, she had very long hair. And at one point, she took her hair and threw it over her face and said, "My father does weird things to me." And I, in my 20s, having never heard about anything like sexual abuse, but we were just beginning to talk about rape. I had no idea what she was talking about. I mean, what do you mean your father does weird things? I don't know what that means, And eventually, of course, I found out. Little by little, she let me know. And I went to the supervisor, who was a Christian psychologist, and I said to him, "I don't know how to help this girl." And he said, the best way to help her is not to believe her. Women sometimes tell these hysterical stories, and your job as a psychologist is not to believe them. So I suppose to say something about my character, because my response to that was to believe her, listen to her, and quit talking to the supervisor about it. So we just had to make it up.
Wow.
So that was the first one.
Well, so you're in your 20s and your supervisor says, "Don't believe the women."
Yes, they're hysterical. I mean, it's the old Freud stuff is what it was.
Wow.
Women get hysterical and they make up things.
And 50 years later, you see in churches, institutions struggling to believe the women today.
Nobody wants it to be true. And frankly, neither do I.
Yeah.
There'd be something wrong with us if we wanted it to be true.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is, it's way more true than we know.
Tell me more about that. What do you mean by that?
Well, you see it in churches all the time or other organizations. Somebody says something and, well, she says things like that, or it's the same old stuff.
Yeah.
Or she's not telling the truth. How could it be true? That's such a fine person, a fine man, whatever. We don't want it to be true. I get that. But it is.
It is.
Now what?
Right. Because I think that's so, I think there's like this internal feeling that most Christians, evangelicals, don't want to be tricked, and they don't want to be complicit in being a part of a system or institution where so much good could happen and also so much evil. And I think that what ends up happening in the congregations or the staffs is people don't necessarily know what to do with that broken trust. Because they're like, that pastor married me, or that pastor baptized me, or that pastor led my son to faith or daughter to faith. How do you walk with congregations or staffs when they're having to wrestle through their own cognitive dissonance of, I don't want to believe this to be true, but it is true. What do I do now?
Well, I think part of it is a very basic thing, which is that we want church to be an exception to the world. But the fact of the matter is the churches are founded by, run by, made famous by people. And the more you want something to be good and important and have this certain reputation, raise this certain kind of money, whatever, the more you will fight for it to look true even when it isn't.
Wow.
Do that with marriages.
Mm.
They live in what is, from my perspective, frankly, a hellhole of a marriage for decades because they don't want to ruin reputation, income, all kinds of things. They are preserving other things, and in order to do so, we are covering up what God hates, what he died for.
Wow. I'm just, I'm just so like, you're like speaking to so much that is like what I experienced at a church in Chicagoland. Um, and I'm just curious, like, why do you think, or how do you think this happens? Is it within the system? Because, and you've done such a great job of giving great definitions around power and abuse and vulnerability, but like, how does this keep happening? And when I think about the character side, how do we as pastors actually kind of be formed and shaped in a way where we resist the systems of abuse or resist the systems of preservation or resist the systems of protection of the institution at all costs? How do we actually shape our pastors? Because in Bible college, nobody taught me this stuff. I never knew the word gaslighting. I never knew these kinds of words about abuse. How would you speak to that?
Well, I think that part of it is that we long for home. We were meant since Eden to be home. It's in us. We'll be again without any interruption or wrongdoing or anything else. But it isn't now. And we still long for it and we want it. And so I think part of it has to do with telling ourselves that we will make one, or we have found one, or we are part of one. The only home that we have as human beings now is the person of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
That's it. It's no organization, it's no place, it's no relationship, it's no marriage, it's no work, it's nothing except. I don't think we see that. I don't think that's what we're told in many places. And we're always looking for the garden.
Yeah.
There is no garden here. And he knows that full well because he lived here, you know? And the garden was not good to him. But I think that part of that is a built-in longing for what we were meant to have. But it is also a deception from others and to ourselves that we have found it. It's here. And so when something shows up that is not that, we pretend we didn't see it, we lie, we do all kinds of things to make it okay because we were built for that.
Wow.
And we long for that. But we don't want to face the fact that it is not. It is him, it is in him, but it is not here.
How do you deal with that in your own life? Like, are you connected to a church? Yeah. And
Yes.
so how do you show up to a place that you know is broken and beautiful, hopefully safe, but like, how do you perceive then what church is when so many, in the church I used to be at would proclaim, the local church is the hope of the world, and that was really,
That's
hey,
a lie.
I know it's a lie. Oh, I know it's a lie.
Not scriptural. It's a lie.
It's a lie. Jesus is the hope of the world, 100%.
Yes.
But I think what ends up happening is in the subconscious is, to your point, oh, this place that we've given to, that we've built, like it's our own little city on a hill, and this is it. And then the stuff falls apart. How do you have like a right relationship with your local church and also find your home in Christ?
Well, I suppose one of the advantages that I have had through the years is that I'm the daughter of an Air Force colonel. So we were whatever denomination the chaplain was. So I did not grow up experiencing a church in a way that many people do.
Yeah.
It was just a place that you went to, chaplain came over for dinner, whatever, but it didn't have the place in the family or the organization or anything that it can have now. And I used to think of that as a loss. Frankly, in recent decades, I have thought that as a gain because I was never confused in terms of the church was being all of this.
Yeah.
Therefore, it was safe and wonderful, and I don't even have to think about it anymore. Air Force kid, I know the enemies are always out there, So I'm in an unusual position that way, I think, to most people.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there are people who come to Christ later in life and are so hungry for a home, for whatever they've been through, literally or just spiritually or whatever. They want a safe place, and we were meant for that.
Yeah.
And so I think it's very easy for people in churches to see what they want it to be. And if something shakes that, they didn't see it right.
Right. Right.
There's something they do on the inside. Or we go after those we say made it not safe, not the leaders, but the little ones. And by that, I don't mean children necessarily, but the little people in the sense of power. And it's their fault. They are trying to hurt this place that we love and find safety in and belongs to God and all those things.
Yeah. You spoke of the word power. It reminds me of one of my favorite books of yours, Redeeming Power. And in that book, you talk about how deception precedes abuse of power. Can you explain why this is?
Well, you go back to the Garden of Eden, that's where it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Part of what you're doing when you're misusing power is you have to find a way to make that okay with the people around you. And so it has to be okay. I mean, the enemy made it okay for them to eat the fruit that they weren't supposed to eat. He framed it in a way that made it okay.
Yeah.
And they did it.
Yeah.
And we do that all the time. And so deception is used so that in our hunger for things that we were meant to have or that are good or anything else is so protected that we don't look at truth around us. We just want it to be okay. And that's what happens with churches all the time in terms of, you have a pastor or so in power and you start hearing about sexual abuse and all kinds of things going on in the church, and you talk yourself out of it. He would never do that. He preaches like this. He's been to our house for dinner. It was like this. It can't be true. These people are just trying to cause a problem. You can't believe them, all kinds of things. And part of that, if not most of it, is our longing for Eden. But it isn't here. It isn't here.
That's so good. Because I think, the collateral damage. I live in Chicagoland, and we've probably had 5 churches in a few years that have just had their own struggles with abuse of power, sexual abuse, some just really, really destructive and deceptive patterns. But I feel like what has happened within the people is they're coming to this realization that it's not their home. And then they've almost been only shaped and formed to believe that that church was their home.
Yes.
And now they feel like they are displaced. And just exactly, and they're just this
we are
wandering.
strangers in a strange land, and
Yes.
we don't like it.
And we don't like it, right? And so I've been leading this little community, and the amount of people who have come up to me and said, "This is my last chance at church. This is my last chance," and there's a part of me that I know I'm gonna let you down, but then there's also this part of me that holds that with all the responsibility. But what I've seen post fallout of all of these, church Me Too, We Too stories, like, has been how slow you have to go to pastor and to regain trust because of the betrayal trauma that has really surfaced. For the pastors that are listening to this, what would you say how to regain trust, whether in an area that has been really, really hurt by the actions of other systems and other pastors?
Well, I guess in part I would say don't make regaining trust a goal.
Okay.
Because whoever you have trust, you have a wonderful marriage, which I have had for over 50 years, whatever, certainly trust. But something could happen.
Yeah.
Because we're fallen people in a fallen world and all kinds of things. We put our faith in the flesh. And when it lets us down, we want to find another piece of flesh that we can put our faith in.
Mm.
And it's not a pastor.
Yep.
It's Jesus Christ. And, we want somebody wearing skin, and I get that. That's why he came like that, because we need to see that. Yeah. But that's not where you can find everlasting safety.
Yep.
Not in anybody here with skin on.
So what are you looking for then from a pastor?
Well, obviously, part of what I am looking for is faithfulness.
Yep.
The other part I'm looking for is what happens when he wasn't, and what does he do with it? And another thing I look for, because it shows you other things about him, is what does he do when somebody important in the church isn't faithful?
Yeah.
How is that handled? Up, denied, whatever. Because I think we've lost sight, if we ever had it, I suppose, but we've lost sight of the fact that the worst thing in the world is not a church falling down. The worst thing in the world is sin. And the reason some churches eventually fall down is because nobody was dealing with the sin. Yeah. So it fell apart, which is not a bad thing. The most important thing is that we are called to a likeness to Jesus Christ in our lives, no matter where we are, who we are, what we do, what an audience we have, or nobody listening, all of that. That's our call, is our personhood, our character, our hearts are to be like him.
Yeah.
Everything else is secondary.
Yep.
You never have a building. It doesn't matter. And of course, I understand our need for buildings and all those kinds of things. It's not like I'm saying we shouldn't have them. But the fact of the matter is, true need is likeness to Christ.
Yeah.
in public and in private, heart and mind.
Yeah.
That's it. You go back to Jesus. I always, no exceptions, I always do pleases the Father. That was his focus.
Yeah. So powerful and so simple. Like the pastor should be faithful and should be trying to demonstrate what Christ likeness looks like. But man, it's so easy to miss that.
Yes.
It's so easy for to get off course 5 degrees, 10 degrees. And what I've found is these systems that like you get a bank loan, the bank's going to look for a key man. And so all of a sudden the pastor becomes the key man to get that loan. And all of a sudden it's like all of these little ways where you now are gaining power, you are becoming the most important person in the organization. And if you go, then that debt's going to be on them. Like it gives you a sense of power in the room. And I realize that a lot of people are wanting bigger buildings because it puts more onus on needing the pastor than actually pointing people to be Christ-like. You're coming out with a book in November, and I have to tell you, I am so excited about this one. I've read all of your stuff. You are winning social media with your posts. We're just going to say that right now. I feel like I take them and I just sit with them, and there's just so deep. But this new book is called "When the Church Harms God's People: Becoming Faith Communities That Resist Abuse, Pursue Truth, and Care for the Wounded." And that subtitle just hits me. I'd love to hear, how do we as churches resist abuse?
Well, I guess we have to be clear about what resist means. I mean, obviously, we don't want to make it happen in the church. That's
Yeah.
obvious statement. But it's much broader than that. Abuse happens because somebody or somebodies want something and somebody else got in the way.
Yep.
And so we do things to build toward a goal rather than to care for the lambs.
Yeah.
And we've got it all wrong with that.
Yeah.
Jesus, when he was here, was not protecting the synagogue. That's not what he did. He's not protecting the system, which was God's. I mean, God made it up. But that's not what he was there for.
Yeah.
No, and our role here as individuals and corporately is to demonstrate a likeness to Christ no matter what happens. That's who we're called to be.
Yeah.
Which can mean cracking whips and turning tables over in a church. And there's some places where that ought to have been done and wasn't.
Yep.
It can mean getting down on your knees next to a little person. It can be walking really slowly with somebody whose legs don't work. It can mean 100 things. But what we do is to bear his likeness. That's the goal.
Yeah.
And you might get a big building out of that, and you might not get any building at all. And it will be okay. Because those are not the goal. They are not proof that you love God and he loves you. Status is in Christ, not in anything else.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, so simple and so profound, and yet we keep missing it.
We do.
So, I feel like integrity and character and trust and safety and Christ-likeness, these words that should be essential almost get to be pushed down to, as long as it doesn't slow us down from achieving that goal.
Yes. Yes.
And the people often want to see growth and see movement and we've created these systems that are just perpetuating pain and abuse. I'm curious, in your line of work, do you find that most abuse and the deception, is it percentage-wise more in abuse of power or sexual abuse in the local church? Is it pretty split, or is there another type of abuse that you're seeing that's happening a lot within the church?
It's hard to say like a more or a less thing, only because so often, and I think usually, not so often, there's more than one kind of abuse involved in abuse.
Yeah. Wow.
So, you have people who are abusive because of the protection of their position, people who are abusive because of how much money they want for their organization. There's just all kinds of things. And then people who are emotionally abusive because you wound their ego if you don't do certain things or say certain things or whatever. So I think we've pretty much got it all covered.
Is there something where we need to be training our congregations to be more aware of how to spot this or how to see this? Or
I think so. Absolutely. Partly, obviously, for the sake of the church, but also people have children who go to schools.
Yes. Yeah.
And you want them to be educated about what to look for and how to handle it and all of those kinds of things for the sake of their children. You've got people sitting in your pews who are being abused at home and haven't ever told anybody.
Yeah.
And it's never talked about from the pulpit. It's not acknowledged, and it certainly doesn't give any kind of assurance that if somebody's experiencing this, number one, it's not okay. God says it's not okay. It's not just me saying it's not okay. And two, we will find a safe way to help you. People are terrified. If somebody's being beaten at home, let's say a wife, and nobody knows because it's only done in places where she covers it up. So what's going to happen to her if she tells? She's going to get beaten up.
Yep.
And so there have to be ways of doing that invite people to speak the truth, but also to teach them, to help them understand about abuse, that it has no place in a home. And if it's in yours, we want to help. If you come to us about that, we will be very careful in finding ways to help you with that so we don't escalate it, which is what they're terrified of, and rightly so.
Right. Right. The subtitle of the book, Becoming Faith Communities That Resist Abuse, Pursue Truth. Talk about the pursuing of truth when the church harms people, because again, I think that there is something often in pastors who are like, well, I want to teach the gospel. And when I was walking through everything at Willow, I was told, just preach the gospel. That's the truth that the people need. And I was like, they need to see repentance. They need to see confession. They need to see us actually humbling ourselves and believing the women. Like, they need to see this. No, just preach the gospel.
Well, but look at that split. Since when is truth and labeling things, calling them by their right name, and all of those things not part of the gospel?
Right.
The gospel speaks truth, and it says that is sin.
Yeah.
That is evil. That does damage to people God loves. It's such a split, and it's not a godly split.
Yep.
That's not how God thinks. You just stand up and preach things from the scriptures. Never mind what's going on over here. That's not how Jesus lived here. I mean, there was a reason the Pharisees didn't like the man.
He was bad for business.
He was. He broke everything up, and he spoke the truth, and they didn't like it.
Yeah.
They wanted him to just preach the gospel. And he didn't do it.
He didn't do it. Yeah. In the pursuit of truth, when someone actually comes forth with an allegation, what would you recommend for pastors? Because again, I think for many, and we've got emerging pastors, we've got senior pastors who've been doing this 30 years. Most seminaries weren't teaching this, Bible colleges teaching this. It was mainly like, hey, be a first reporter, like mandatory reporter, but it wasn't anything to the degree of how to walk this stuff out and walk it out well. And I'm curious for you, what would you hope for a pastor to do if an allegation came?
Well, my first hope would be that the pastor would have done some training and some talking to others and things prior to that event.
Yeah.
Starting with an event and nothing else is not good. It's going to end up being hurtful.
Yep.
And not carefully done just because it's not understood. So I would encourage pastors to look around in their area, talk to other pastors, or who's your go-to person in terms of these issues?
Yeah.
And what can I learn? And what can the rest of the leadership in my church learn with me?
Yep.
And I think they have to prepare themselves, or they will do more damage, or they just won't do it because they don't know what to do, or whatever.
Yep.
So I think it goes back a step. Then when somebody comes and knocks on your door and stumbles around and doesn't know how to say it and everything else, and finally makes it clear that either the husband who's beating whatever out of them, or they have been sexually abused by somebody in the church 10 years ago as an adolescent, or something now, or something happening to a child, or whatever, they will already have knowledge and a way to respond. And part of learning those things will also give them information about people in other fields who can come alongside with them to help this happen in a way. I mean, because you take it like with a woman who's in a domestic violence situation. You may want to help her all the way down to your little toes, and you may care about her and everything else. But if you don't know how to do her right and then you send her home, she could turn up dead the next day.
Right.
So it has to be done well and wisely. And I think part of what we've lost, if you look through history, we Christians go up and down, too much, too little, whatever, but we have lost the frighteningness, the evil, the harm done by sin. And that when we have for how women to go home and love her husband better, and she's getting beat. We do things like that all the time.
Yeah.
And we are protecting sin. And we're protecting sin that is destroying someone made in the image of God. But we're also protecting the sinner.
Yeah.
Who was made in the image of God.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're keeping that person eating dirt.
Yeah.
So there is a lot to learn in order for it to be done protectively and wisely. And one of the biggest things through the years, it's less now, I have to say, but in earlier years, the biggest question I would ever get in a church situation or a pastor would ask or whatever is, what if it's not true? They always wanted to tilt toward this can't be true thing.
Yeah.
Well, if you can read statistics, you're on the wrong side of the fence.
Yep.
So I think that has changed. I'm sure there are places where it is not, but it has changed a lot since I started out.
I think that's really what you were saying about the protection of the sinner. I think that it's fascinating that we have this subconscious ranking system, right? So we rank that the marriage is more important than this abuse that this woman is going through or this man is going through. And we just simply just say, well, no. And I've heard this, I've seen this. I've heard stories where pastors have told the woman, nope, just go back, don't get a divorce, don't. And again, it's the protection of an idea over actually caring for the wounded and caring enough for that sinner to actually, because if he can keep doing this and get away with it, he's never or she's never going to get a chance to actually repent and grow. But I'm curious why in our subconscious do we protect systems, institutions, and ideas over people?
Because they make us feel safe, not by ourselves. Oh, if my church is okay, or my pastor's okay, not beating his wife, whatever, or my children are okay because I don't believe that stuff. We want to be okay. And on one level, I understand that we were created to be okay.
Yeah.
We're not what we were created to be. And all of us has a longing for it. And some people try to pursue it in all kinds of awful ways. And some people try to pursue it in good ways. But the fact of the matter is we're not, and we're not going to be okay here.
Yeah.
We're still going to be broken. We're still going to be hungry. We're still going to be uncertain. We're going to be hurt. All those things are still true. Now what?
Ooh. That's I think too, in a lot of non-denominational contexts, we have taught that confession happens once. And it, to receive Christ.
Haven't lived in my life.
and it's,
my goodness.
It's not, and I think if like ongoing confession, that was Catholic or that, and so this not Protestant. And so I feel like they pushed away the concept of confession. So then when you have an opportunity for a pastor to have to confess, it's almost like they don't have the spiritual muscle to do it. When I feel like Dallas Willard used to say, I try to have one grand confession a day, just because it showcases how much I need Christ and need the Spirit's help to be more Christ-like. Talk about how a church can model healthy just confession or a healthy practice of, we got this wrong. We didn't do this right. I just feel like, and it could be in a hire, it could be in a transition, it could be in a moment where it's an opportunity to talk about, I didn't get this right, and I next time I'm going to do it better. But it's like we're so afraid, and we're just hoping I can manage that this doesn't make it to Twitter. Instead of confessing. And I often will say about confessing is most therapists, lawyers, police officers, and pastors will say that people confess to what the other person already knows to be true. Yes. But that's not really confession. That's just acknowledgement. Confession is going farther and actually inviting people into the vulnerability of, here's reality, and here's my sin, or here's the choices I made. Talk about how pastors, or maybe the better way to say it is, talk about how you would love to see pastors confess.
Well, I guess the first thing is that I long to see more awareness of both sin or sin struggles in the self, and then how those have been handled in a marriage with their children. It's often something people haven't even thought about.
Right.
The depth is, oh, honey, I'm so sorry I did that, and go on to whatever. Which, sometimes that's a perfectly fine thing to do. I'm not saying it isn't. But we don't want to be wrong. Yeah. And we work very hard not to be wrong. And we do more wrongs by doing that. And I don't think we even see that. I think some of it is that the church, and I think globally, the church has lost sight and understanding and depth about the cross.
Tell me more. I believe it, and I want to hear your thoughts on it.
First of all, yes, Christ is raised, and he is in heaven, and all of those things. So I have no question about any of that. But the fact is that the cross is not over. Yeah. It's still needed. And if you don't think it is, you're not paying attention to your own life. Ways that we wound each other or do wrong.
Yeah.
Travel, I do whatever. I hear a lot of sermons in different places and countries and everything else. But there's not so much about the cross anymore. There used to be more.
Yeah.
Which is not a little light to go out and everybody talk about the cross on Sunday. But, but we need to study it again. Personally first.
Yeah.
We need to read. We need to pray. We need to walk and think about it. And, because that is what is central in our lives. Should be. As long as we live on this planet before him.
Yeah.
First of all, it's the only reason he'll pay attention to us when he comes again. It's because of that cross. So we've lost that way. And I do have some memories as a child doing different chaplains and things like that in the Air Force, but every once in a while hearing someone speak about the cross in a way that just went down to my toes. I mean, I could have been 8 years old, frankly, but we don't hear much of that anymore. It's not central. It's central on Sundays.
Yeah.
I mean, on Easter.
On Easter, yep. Good Friday, yep. It's fascinating because I think what you're describing, I think we've lost the fear of the Lord, like a reverence for holiness and a reverence for goodness and a reverence for God. I think that we've lost that. And you saw that throughout the Hebrew scriptures. I think you're right. I think that we have lost the centrality, the supremacy of Christ and what he did on that cross. I think what's interesting is when we minimize our sin, I don't think we can fully claim what he did. You know what I mean? And so I think that what I'm watching is church is afraid to talk about sin. So if I'm afraid to talk about sin, then then I don't need the cross.
Right.
Right. And then I also then don't need to talk about my sin. And then the pastor doesn't end up needing the cross, and except for a message on Easter, and Good Friday. But and we talk about this in our church often, is the cruciform life, a life that is shaped by the death, the burial, the resurrection, but a life of carrying this cross and needing this cross. I'm curious for you is why do you think in the subconscious as a therapist and counselor, why is it that we minimize sin? Whether it's a pastor, whether it's humanity, why is it that we want to look better than we actually are?
Well, I think part of it is a genuine caring for other people and wanting them to feel better.
Mm-hmm.
Which is not a bad thing.
Right.
It's just the wrong road. But I don't think it's something a lot of people do for wrong motives or something like that.
Yeah.
And really looking at the cross and understanding it and studying it and applying it to myself is painful.
Yeah.
And it isn't just painful because I have to look at myself, knows that's painful. But then I really look at who Jesus was and what he did.
Yeah.
And I think we've lost a real understanding.
Mm.
And it's hard to look at,
Yeah. Yeah.
hard to absorb, which on one level we can't absorb it anyway. We're too finite. But he did is unspeakable. How do you talk about the unspeakable, and yet we must? So a lot of it is not just so much digging in and looking at myself and how awful I can be.
Mhm.
So you can be sure if you go to the cross and start studying it, you will find those things out. But it is to really understand who he was and is and what he has done for us.
Yeah.
I think we're pretty superficial about that in Christmas.
Wow. I'm curious, as someone who has, had people come into your office and share just horrific stories of abuse. I often think about pastors who will sit and listen to these stories, and you then have to write a message, or for you, you're giving a talk or writing a book or going home to a family. How do you still live integrated while holding all of these stories? And I think that in the therapy world, you have been trained, I imagine, I'm just assuming this, how to hold that stuff better than pastors. And I think sometimes pastors escape because I don't know what to do with another death or another divorce or another person getting sick or another issue. And it like overwhelms them, and they just look for an escape. And that escape is some counterfeit God in Tim Keller language. How do you just hold the reality of the brokenness and yet not let it disintegrate you?
Well, I would first say I don't think that most therapists really do know how to do that. They're taught that they need to do that, but not so much about how or what.
Okay.
Because we get a lot of burnout therapists here.
Yeah.
Understandably.
Yeah.
People in helping professions of any kind typically not very good at that. I certainly began to learn more about it and much more deeply when I reached a point in my career when I basically said to God, I just want you to know
Wow.
I'm done. And I was. And that's where it began in terms of learning. And this is a group practice, and it's, we emphasize get together as a group and all kinds of things. So there's not an aloneness in the work and whatever. But the other thing that God taught me, which is such a sweet thing, which I have given to other therapists and pastors and whatever to think about, is that if I'm going to work in this world and deal with these things, I need to learn how to deliberately seek and find beauty.
Wow.
Which is as much a part of this world as the evil is, and the beauty part he made. So, I love walking in the woods. I love music. There's all kinds of things, watching flowers grow in my yard and everything else, and that's one of the things we teach therapists here. You have to basically be drinking beauty.
Yes.
Because you're going to get all messed up if you don't.
Yep. Yep.
And you're not going to be beautiful if that happens. So it's an interesting thing when I first began thinking about it and all, because all the beauty here, God gave us.
Yep.
And he did not remove it when we sinned. He took us out of the garden, which I can't imagine the beauty in that. But he didn't take the beauty away. is here for us. And it's here for us because it's part of who he is. And I think I don't think seminaries teach pastors about that. I don't, and so things like drinking too much or all kinds of things become the place that you go. And I think it's meant to be beauty of some kind or several kinds or whatever. Feed us to remind us of who he is and that's what it's all going to be like eventually. And then you go back to the dirt pile.
Yeah. Yep. Dr. Langberg, I have been so blessed by your work. Your writing, post 2018, I just started reading your stuff, and you put language to stuff that I never was taught, never knew. But I think what I've been so impressed by is, one, you're a truth teller. Your courage to say it and say what needs to be said, but also how Christ just shines through you and the way that you talk about Christ and the cross. And as much of a truth teller, and oftentimes the truth tellers get a bad rap of just being angry and frustrated, there is like this real fire and yet gentle and good and grace-filled spirit that I just see in you. And I appreciate that, because I feel like you are holding both well. And as Jesus was, and John wrote about Jesus, they came in the fullness of grace and truth. And I see how you really are embodying that Christ-likeness, and in making our churches stronger and healthier, and helping to really care for the wounded in ways that for many, many decades, they didn't have a voice, and they didn't have an opportunity to experience being seen by someone who represented Christ well. And I just, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for who you are and what you do. And friends, please pick up in November, When the Church Harms God's People. It's going to be an incredible book. I just know it because every one of her books have just spoken to me. Dr. Langberg, where can people find you?
You think that's something I want to tell you?
I mean online.
If they just put my name in, the office will come up, and
Okay.
You can send email that way. It comes in all the time. And
Yep.
Wonderful in charge of office person who takes care of all that and makes sure I get it and follows up and makes sure I did something with it.
Well, friends, please follow her online, because you'll see every day she is dropping quotes and statements. And it is, if you just take some of those and then just sit with the Lord in them, and really begin to reflect on what this statement and how it compares to your system and your institution and your church and your leadership, I'm telling you, you will almost get like a mini master's in preparing yourself, God forbid, if any time you had to deal with something difficult, which, as she said earlier, if we're not deliberately chasing the beauty, it's going to be hard on us, especially when we have to return to the dirt pile. So, Dr. Langberg, thank you so much for joining us on the Craft and Character podcast. It means the world to have you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.